because we have traditionally, people of color and Black people in particular, when we keep fighting for things, when we fight, yes, we win, and so do other people, and so do other groups, and we have to call it like it is, right? And so with that, we're going to switch over. We're going to segue into our topic for this evening, and that is um, uh, about a about a couple of years ago. No, let me not speculate. I attended the launching of the New Jersey Council for Reparations that was sponsored by New Jersey Institute for Social Justice in Perth Amboy. Little did we know that Perth Amboy was a stop for ships. We did not know that. They have markers posted all around, dotting a little streetscape, and they had that ceremony just recently. And so when we talk about reparations, the narrative is generally, well, you know, we're not going to get any reparations. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And we keep saying it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But yet it has happened for other groups of people. We know this. We know this. And we know that um, that it depends on what group of people it is. So say for the Native Americans who were taken off their land, sometimes if they put in a grievance the right way, they got their land back. But it was only after a lot of trial and circumstances. We're aware that um, during World War II, when the United States interred Japanese residents, that there was a reparations from, I think it was like something from the 1950s all the way to the 70s. There was reparation. Matter of fact, it was $1.6 billion worth of reparations that was given to Japanese Americans. Now, I'm not hating on any other group. I am pulling these examples to show that if other groups who have been irreparably harmed in some way can get some type of reparations, it should not be such a far-fetched idea for us. Now, have we has the apology come through? Yes. The Congress apologized for slavery in 2008. No money attached, or no, or anything else for that matter. In 2009, it was the U.S. Senate that apologized. But again, an apology with no flowers, is it real? Is it authentic? You want to, if you are sincere and authentic, you want to give the person something to show that you really do feel badly about this. That has not happened to us as a group. It has not. In some states, it has. And so what New Jersey Institute for Social Justice said, okay, if this has happened in some states, like I think it was Evanston, Illinois, where the housing crisis was so bad that the Evanston officials started giving reparations in the form of down payment for houses and helping with mortgages, because they understood that the housing crisis that Black people were experiencing was a direct line, a linear line from enslavement to now. The same thing happened in another state, but federally, it has not happened. And we have been so giving and forgiving, and then we turn on ourselves, and we don't need to do that. We need to build community. And if being compensated in some way, because we all joke about the 40 acres and a mule. And then some people who were enslaved, who actually did get property, it was taken back from them and given back to their owner. And so I just want us to hear Miss Alexis and her report with an open mind. Please don't think that, oh, reparations can't happen for Black people. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. And as advocates, we don't shy away from saying we advocate for reparations. The New Jersey Reparations Council did their study so that they could have evidence of why we should get reparations here in New Jersey. And so, as many of you know, Ryan Haygood is the CEO of the Institute for Social Justice and a very close friend to the NAACP. And when he was approached about this, he thought that it was great because it's one thing to have a study and another thing to make it live. Having a study and putting it on a shelf does not, it doesn't do anything. It's a study put on a shelf. It may not come to fruition for many years down the road, but we get to give life to this document that a whole host of people, professionals, put together to bring a case of why we should have reparations in New Jersey. So with that, I am going to turn the meeting over, and I want to apologize. I want to publicly apologize. Laissa, L-A Laissa is her name, not what I had, Lavisha. That's not her name. So I'm gonna call her Miss Alexis so I can be correct. So I asked that Miss Alexis come on, and so how we're gonna do this is she's gonna make a presentation for us, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions as well. Okay?
Hi, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Just doing a mic check. Okay,
Yes,
great. Also, I am signed in twice because
I saw that.
I'm
Yeah.
using this one for my face.
Okay.
The other
Okay.
account is for me to share my presentation with y'all.
Okay.
Um, so yes, my name is Laissa. I work at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. I'm a research fellow for for the Reparations Council. So I did a lot of the research that's in the report. And so I'll just be doing a small presentation. I know that we have about a half hour left, so I want to leave time for questions, but I'll do a small presentation on a bit of the history of reparations, how we got to this particular report, how we went about the process of choosing the things that are in the report, and then finally, so what are some of our recommendations, right? The report is available online. We released it this past June. It's about 200 pages. A lot of those are footnotes as well. So it's a very research heavy report, right? So we welcome folks to take time to read it um, over over the course of a few days, weeks, however long. Read it in community, a book club, however, we just want folks to engage with it, right? So I don't know if I have access to share my presentation. I do.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Let me see if I can. Okay, great. I do. Let's hope that this works. Um, Great. Do you guys see something?
Yes, we see New Jersey's Reparations Council.
Oh, okay, great. Do you
Well,
still see it? I might have.
no.
Oh, okay. I knew it. I knew I did something wrong. I'll try it one more time. Okay, great. I'll click on present. All right, great. So this is our logo here. You did a great bit of summary right before I talked. So I'll repeat some of the things that were said. But I'll also do a bit of grounding for us as to sort of how we're thinking about the reparations report, but also how we're hoping to organize folks around this report, right? So we've come up with a list of a few core values and principles, which are based both on the Institute's own sort of theory of change, but also some of the work that we're interested in doing as a reparations council. So one is building power, right? We can't have reparations without sort of building a base, especially amongst Black folks, because Black people overwhelmingly support the idea of reparations. Whether or not they believe it's going to happen is something that's we're calling sort of the hope gap, right? Folks want it to happen, but not necessarily believe that it can happen, right? So the way that we can get folks to believe that it can happen is to sort of do that building power. So that involves grassroots leadership, right? Working with not just folks who are sort of in the movement, who know the lingo of reparations, right? Know the social justice lingo, as I like to call it, but people, everyday folks, working class people who are interested in this and have ways of connecting to community members that maybe I don't have, right? Or maybe versed in different ways of connecting with folks, right? We're also interested in sort of flexibility and innovation. So sometimes we're in a mode of sort of doing ways of reaching out to people. Maybe we're always canvassing, maybe we're always doing sort of phone banking, right? But what are other ways that we can reach out to folks to innovate some of our organizing work? Not just in the organizing, right? But how are we staying accountable to Black folks in terms of thinking about like what exactly do people want to see, right, in this world of reparations? How do they want to see this conversation go? Um, our future orientation is thinking that reparations is obviously something that we're doing to sort of repair at the past, right? The original sin, as some folks say, of slavery. But we're also seriously thinking about ways that we can use this as a world building project, right? How can we use this as a way to shape the future that we want to see? And last year, our report is very interested in both bold truth telling. But we live in this moment, many of you have mentioned it already, where folks want to erase history, make sure that folks are not learning things that actually exist, whether it's Black history or anything else, really, vaccines, really anything that functions and a functioning society, right? So part of the report's purpose is to make sure that those this idea that New Jersey is a state that didn't practice slavery is no longer a thing that people repeat. That people are very, very knowledgeable about the state's history in order for us to start advocating for reparations. So again, a bit about reparations, the history of reparations. There are two folks that we sort of thank as the mothers of the reparation movement, right? We have Callie House here, sort of in the Black and white photo, and then the Queen Mother Moore, right? These are two women who advocated for reparations in different ways. Callie House advocated amongst ex-slaves, right, for reparations, and Queen Mother Moore was sort of the woman who, in the mid 20th century, started what we call the modern reparations movement. Um, I won't spend too much time here because I want to get into the report. So just a bit more grounding about what is reparations, right? So how do we think about how do we sort of figure out what we want in our report? So we use the sort of UN International Human Rights definition of reparations, which are these five principles here, right? So secession and guarantees of non-repetition, restitution, compensation, which is probably the one that folks are most familiar with, right? Direct payments for whatever harm, satisfaction, and rehabilitation, right? So secession and guarantees of non-repetition is sort of pretty clear, right? Once you sort of go through this reparations project, you agree that whatever harm that happened before will no longer happen again, right? So it's not just the sin of slavery, right? It's all this sort of attending legacy with it, whether that's housing discrimination, school segregation, all these sorts of things, right? There are legacies of anti-Black racism. All those things sort of need to stop happening, right? In order for the reparations policies for them to be considered reparations, right? Satisfaction is the community who's been affected by this particular issue. Are they satisfied with what you're presenting to them, right? So you can't offer an apology and then be okay with it if the person you're apologizing to is like, nah, this ain't it, right? So this is a key point of the reparations movement. Rehabilitation is the idea that you can return the sort of group or the person who's been harmed back to the condition that they were in before they were harmed. Now, it's a little difficult to sort of think about that when you're thinking about folks who were removed from their little place of home and brought to a different place. But the idea is to restore a sense of ability to thrive, right? An ability to a sense of autonomy and agency, right, is the idea here, right? So not literal conditions of moving back, though some folks are really interested in that, but it's sort of restoring the sense of agency and autonomy. All right. So, like we mentioned before, one of the key goals of the reparations report is to make sure that folks are very educated on the history of slavery in New Jersey, but also the histories of the segregationist policies that happened post-slavery in the state. And what a lot of the questions that we get is like, why are we doing this now? We're a lot of hesitancy as we were releasing this report about folks saying it's not really the right time because of all the stuff happening federal with the Trump administration. But the thing about reparations is that there's never a right time. Folks have been asking for reparations for centuries now, and there's never been a moment to demand for the things that you deserve, right? So it's not really about shaping our movement around the moment. It's making sure that I guess we stay goal oriented and goal focused. Um, so yes, so the Reparations Council was officially launched in Perth Amboy in June 2023. There was a sort of ceremony there when Ryan and some folks at the Institute sort of spoke about the history of slavery in New Jersey and how that affects the things, the sort of inequities that we see in the state today. And then, so for the last 2 years, right, we released the report in June of this past June, rather. We've had about 50 committee members, right, working on this report. So we had about 9 committees, all oriented around different topics, whether it was segregation, health equity, criminal justice, democracy, education, environmental justice, right? We sort of all the things that sort of affect folks' lives on a day-to-day basis. We had sort of experts, academics, historians, lawyers, and really anyone with some expertise around the topic to be on the committee to discuss it. We also had public sessions, which I hope some of y'all were able to attend, but if not, they're available on our YouTube site, right? If you're interested in how we came up with these research points, why these are the things that the committee members thought were the most important to discuss in the report, right? All those public sessions are online. So this is sort of where a lot of the inspiration for the report. So the Institute does a lot of work around the racial wealth gap. And this is the newest number that came out this a few months ago, actually. I think this report came out actually just before the Reparations Council report came out. And you can see there's a very large racial wealth gap between Black households and white households, right? And this is measuring sort of the wealth of home, right? The assets that families own, right? And so a lot of Black families don't own homes, and those who do, their homes don't tend to have very high values, right? Due to housing discrimination, due to redlining, all these sorts of things, right? All this sort of history that we're already familiar with, right? So we were like, what are some of the ways that we can think about not only closing the racial wealth gap, but addressing all the things that come with not being able to sort of economically thrive in our state particularly. So like I mentioned before, these are some of the purposes of the report. And I just want to mention the call out our leaders of the state. Part was before we launched this Reparations Council report in 2023, the Institute was very focused on getting the state to pass the Reparations Task Force bill. So some of you might have heard about the California Task Force bill, where California's governor, Gavin Newsom, signed a bill that officially launched a task force where the state would do research on the history of anti-Black racism in California and then come up with some remedies around that, right? Reparations. We were at the state. New Jersey was actually one of the first states to get this ball rolling with the Institute and its partners sort of advocating around this, right? But our legislators were like, nah, we don't want this to happen here, particularly because of the hesitancy around the word reparations, right? They were concerned about the sort of focus on Black folks and helping Black people thrive, and also on the word reparation because they felt it was divisive, right? So they were interested maybe in some of the policies that the Institute was introducing, but not reparations, but not the word reparations. So the Institute launched a Say the Word Reparations campaign for about a couple years. Again, trying to agitate our legislators to really take this seriously. And in the end, they were still like, nah, we're still a little skittish around this word. So that's when the Institute decided to sort of do this our own task force, right? Do our own study so that the state can no longer be like sort of moseying around this particular issue. So now we have the study and the report. What are you going to do about it? So we this is a picture of a house. I can't remember exactly where this particular house was. It's in my notes somewhere. But it's a house where formerly enslaved folks lived. It was used on the Underground Railroad. I found this photo in the New Jersey State Archives. This is me with my researcher hat on. Um, but I use this photo to sort of illustrate New Jersey's history of slavery. So as I mentioned before, um, the slavery has a long-lasting history in New Jersey. New Jersey is actually the last state in the North to abolish slavery. 6 months after Juneteenth, actually, in 1866, so which is a tidbit that a lot of folks don't know about. And when we did a poll a few months ago, we found out only about 45% of people that were polled know about New Jersey state history of slavery, and they probably don't know a lot of information. So Black folks in the state who were enslaved worked in all kinds of industries, right? Whether it was agricultural industries, they worked in mines, right? They were very involved in the development of the state's wealth. And New Jersey was also, we talk a lot about the history of the Underground Railroad, and sort of the way that Black communities in the state sort of helped folks from other places escape, right? And that is because that there was this sort of thriving Black community here, a lot that were both free and enslaved, right? Sort of working together to sort of fight for autonomy. And so there's a legacy of sort of Black resistance and all these things happening in our state. And so that's also a lot, that's also discussed a lot in our report, because we want to mention about the ways that Black folks continue to fight, even under the conditions of slavery. Um, One thing that we mention a lot that we talk about in the report that folks also don't know about is that New Jersey, so New Jersey passed the Gradual Abolition Act in 1804, which essentially was someone who was born into the institution of slavery would be a slave until the age of 21. I don't have the information right in front of me. And then after 21, their enslaver could what's it called, freedom, right? And so as a result of this bill, right, folks who own slaves were like, well, I'm going to lose sort of something from this. How am I going to be compensated for this? And the state was like, sure, we'll give you money. And so this here is sort of an outline of all the money that the state gave to folks to enslavers between 1806 and 1811, compensating them for the loss of their slaves, essentially. At one point, it was about 30% of the state's budget, um, which is incredible. When we talk about reparations today, folks are like, well, we don't have the money for it. I'm like, well, if they want to do it, they'll find the money. Like, it's really about will here. It's never about the money. Don't let folks ever let's fool you into thinking that it's an issue of money. Um, but as you can see here, yeah, but at some point that it became such a high cost for the state's budget that they decided not to do it anymore. Right. So this is one of the ways that we're sort of educating folks and letting them know that these things are possible, right? Like that it's not simply about money, it's about the political will to do so. Um, this is a photo, I think this was 1898 of a woman. I think this was in Trenton, Mercer County, somewhere in Mercer County. But I use this image to illustrate again the long legacies of Black folks in the state. Also that a woman like her would still face lots of sort of prejudice and segregationist attitudes, right? Even though there was some sort of I guess, progressive policies that were passed in our state, right? New Jersey still to this day has one of the most segregated school systems, legacy of slavery. New Jersey till this day has one of the highest sort of racial inequalities in our prison system. About 59% of folks in prison are Black, right? All, again, legacies of slavery. And again, something that we continue to highlight in the report. All right. So now we're going to get into a bit of like, we talk a lot about the history, we talk a lot about what's happening historically and up to present day. But like, what exactly are some of the recommendations that we make? We have about 90 recommendations, I think. And they're all, again, under different categories, right? Health, environmental justice, education, faith institutions, all sort of asking everybody in the states to sort of do their part in addressing what what we want to see, right? And when thinking about reparations, we were thinking about this issue holistically, right? So again, not just about compensation, but that there are sort of different criteria for eligibility. So, for example, we call for direct payments to folks whose ancestors were enslaved in New Jersey. But also, we are interested in how these policies can benefit Black people, all Black folks who live in the state, because we understand that the legacy of anti-Black racism affects all Black folks, right? No matter where they come from and how they got to New Jersey and when they got to New Jersey, right? And so all these things we're thinking about this sort of holistically. So this is sort of a rough sketch of what's in the report, where are some of the recommendations. I'm trying to make sure. Okay, I'm gonna close up a little bit because I want to leave time for questions. So like I said, right, direct payments to descendants in New Jersey, sort of a guaranteed income plan. Our Center for Black Health Excellence, right? So the Health Equity Committee was interested in thinking about some of the ways that we can address some of the health issues in the Black community. What that includes scholarships to Black students to study medicine, incentives to doctors to work in Black communities, but also the state setting a particular state center for Black health excellence focused on Black communities and the ways that we can address the health inequities existing there. We have recommendations to religious institutions in terms of looking deeply into their own histories and their own archives to see how they've been implicated in the history of slavery in our state and what they can do to sort of pay restitution for that, right? So we have all these sorts of policies here um, in the report. So I think, well, I want to close this story that I found in my research. Timbuktu is it's a Black settlement in South Jersey. It's been long inhabited by Black folks, early on inhabited by escaped quote unquote slaves, who sort of found some land and sort of built their home and found some sense of autonomy there. And this story here on the sort of old newspaper print is a story of the Battle of Pine Swamp, where a man named Perry Simmons escaped slavery from Maryland, right, and came to Timbuktu. And New Jersey was a state that supported or sanctioned the Fugitive Slave Act, which essentially allowed kidnappers from slave states to come up north and find Black folks who they accuse of having escaped slavery, right? So this happened to Perry, right? He leaves the institution, he leaves his status of he self-emancipates is the word I'm looking for, right? And then some folks from the South, kidnappers from the South, come up to Timbuktu to try to kidnap him, right? But the community gathers around Perry Simmons and kicks him out, and kicks them out rather, and able to protect Perry from being sold back into the institution of slavery. And so I always like to end with this story because I want folks to sort of gather that spirit where you're sort of focused on building a sense of community and sort of protecting the most marginalized amongst us, which is what we hope this sort of reparations project is able to do. All right, so again, a lot of this work is about organizing, right? How do we organize folks to get involved in this particular project? So a lot of my work is around education. So I'll be doing a lot of these sorts of presentations to get folks excited about reparations and to learn a bit more about what's in the report. I'm gonna skip a little bit of this and go straight to questions because I don't know. I want to know if people have any questions. So thank you for your time. I hope I didn't run for too long.
No, 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 you gave us what is needed. This document, it's a document. It is over 200 pages and it is available online.
Yes.
Can you say what is the website to go
Yeah,
to?
it's njisj.org. So it's the Institute's website. I'll just put it, let me see if I'll just put the report in the chat actually. Give me 1 second to
Okay,
find it.
so you can look at it. It is not a single reading. It is a look at it, look at a chapter or two, and come back and look at another chapter or two. Um, Miss Alexis gave us a very general overview, but it is very specific
Hmm.
as it relates to each of those categories. Can you throw up the next to the last slide where it talks about, not the one where it talks about what we're looking for? Yeah, that one. And
This
so,
one.
yeah, that one.
Okay.
And so there, these are all very detailed chapters within the report.
Hmm.
And so if you see one that interests you, you can go to that particular chapter and start there. But
Yeah.
we can't, this is a living document. We
Hmm.
cannot just keep it on a shelf. It was not an academic study. It was not an academic exercise. And if we're going to advocate for different issues, this is one of the issues that we can certainly say, okay, this is something that we want to advocate with, for, to, and regardless to whether we get responses or not, we're
Hmm.
to keep it in the forefront.
Hmm.
Okay. So,
Yes.
Laissa, tell me your first name so I
Oh,
can say
Laissa. Yes.
Laisha. Okay, so you have a
Laissa.
question from Rick Robinson.
Hi.
Hey, Laisha, listen, I am so moved that you guys put this together. I know it took some time. Congratulations to you and your team, Lorraine Haygood. Um, I know that we had NAACP presence on here at the beginning, but we'll find out about that later. What I wanted to ask is two things. So I see the democracy Reparations Bureau. Is that the umbrella for all of the different ones, or that just a separate actual piece to look into? Are you there? Uh-oh, she might have froze up. Okay.
She's
And
back.
then the other,
No,
yeah,
she's back. I think
oh,
she's
she's back. Okay.
yeah, just take yourself off mute.
I'm so sorry. I'm
That's
back.
okay. That's okay.
You probably
Yes, you
got
were
three
saying.
phones on this thing there, Lisa.
It's my internet just went out for like a second at the worst possible moment.
It's
That,
fine.
that's what, and listen,
So
that's what's been happening. And,
it does
we're
happen.
gonna keep on. We will not be defeated. We're gonna keep on keeping on.
I'm gonna keep going. So I asked a
Yeah.
question about two questions I have. The
Hmm.
first one says Democracy Bureau. Is that the umbrella or is that one separate research engine?
Oh yes, yes, yes. So we have a democracy committee, and we were the democracy committee was interested in sort of creating a reparations bureau, sort of a state entity that would be responsible for sort of all the reparation policies, sort of making sure all those things sort of follow through, right? So
Okay.
again, about creating some accountability. That's what that reparations bureau
All
is.
right. Thank you.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the other question is again I'll congratulate you and your team and
Hmm. Thank
Brother
you.
Haygood on this because it was fantastic. Um have you had any, I would say, correspondence throughout the nation in regards to your report?
Through the nation, you said?
Yeah, throughout the nation. So
Throughout the
I heard
nation.
you earlier when you said that
Hmm.
New Jersey is like one of the first states to actually engage in this type of provision pertaining to reparations.
Hmm.
So I know it's still young, but have you had any correspondence throughout the nation in regards to
Yes,
this
yes, yes. Yes.
phenomenon?
So, yeah, our team is very involved in the reparations movement. So, we're constantly in conversations with folks in Evanston, like Deborah mentioned earlier, in California, New York also just launched its own sort of government task force, right? So, we're in connection with folks all across the country, sort of doing some state and local reparations work. Definitely. And
Thank you.
everybody's moving at different paces, right? So, everyone's sort of having their own
Well,
challenges.
your report shocked everybody. You know, and especially our elected officials who are staying
Mm.
away from the word reparations.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so they probably will be more, I would say, engaged if we were to pretty much change the wording, but we're not.
We're
In
not,
regards to
yeah.
like something forgiven or
Hmm.
something like that. But no,
Mm-hmm.
I like reparations and I want to stick with that as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course.
Thank you. Are
Mm-hmm.
there any other questions? So I guess my question, um, I've been involved in a lot of conversations about reparations, and
Mm-hmm.
someone said to me that there is a need to take this issue
Mm-hmm.
um, to the UN in a
Mm-hmm.
collective way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that the various states are taking, taking the initiative to say, no, we're going to do something, but
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to taking lodging a formal complaint with
Mm-hmm.
the United Nations, the way that other countries have done, uh,
Mm-hmm.
to testify and to protest, if you will, um,
Mm-hmm.
harmful treatment of a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know whether that was something that was entertained, if that is something that's in the works, something that would be presented at the UN Council.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not something that we discussed as a council in particular because we were so focused on New Jersey. But I will say there is a lot of conversation in the reparations movement more generally around taking this issue more internationally. If y'all are interested, the African Union and Carrie Com have having a lot of sort of transnational conversations around this issue of reparations and taking it to an international level. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us in the US to sort of join this conversation as well. There has been some historical precedent for like taking petitions to the UN. There was a recharge genocide document. I think that was in 1961, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. But Paul Robeson was
Yep.
a key developer of that. And it was a petition that Black folks in the US submitted to the UN, sort of charging the United States with genocide for all the crimes against Black folks, right? So there's some precedent for sort of taking this thing to an international level since we know our federal government is simply not interested. But then the question becomes, what exactly can international law do? Like, what pressures can we put on? Then it becomes a real head scratcher about what the mechanisms that really exist for us to take action. But that's the definitely something we've had discussions about, but you won't find that too much in the report. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And we
Mhm.
have we do have time for one more question. I think our Lee McBride has a question for you.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, yes, thank you. First of
Hmm.
all, that was a great presentation. Great
Thank you.
presentation. It's actually not a question, but just a suggestion.
Hmm.
Since you serve with them. I have that too. I have that book, We Charge Genocide with Park Robeson, and I forgot the other individual's name that actually
Hmm.
did that with him. Um, just the weekend that just passed, on my way to South Carolina and coming back, I read 100 pages of Richard Williams's biography, the father
Hmm.
of Serena and Venus Williams. And he
Hmm.
talked about his life in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Hmm.
Richard Williams was the same age as my mother. He was 83 years old. And if you read that book, you would swear that it was during the time of enslavement, his
Hmm.
experiences in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I
Hmm.
think that one suggestion, not just to you, but to everyone,
Hmm.
to get more of us involved in the history um, collectively, and not just those that are involved, because at the end of the day, it's going to require people uh,
Hmm.
from the community to actually get
Yes.
behind this thing. Because the reality is that even though I follow this, I've been following reparations since back in the day when Queen Mother Moore was alive, right?
Hmm.
When I was in my teens, I followed it. The problem has always been when you have these discussions, people have no idea what you're talking about. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't think that people really didn't know what reparations are. We still have a swath of our community that still don't necessarily know what
Hmm.
reparations is, and that it
Hmm.
is owed to us, and that it was actually promised to us for the most
Hmm.
part. But that's one thing I suggested. If anybody gets a chance, please read Richard Williams's book. I mean, it's actually mind blowing, and the book starts off with him giving advice to Serena before she won Wimbledon, and then it
Mhm.
goes into his life in Shreveport, Louisiana. I mean,
Mhm.
interaction with the clan. You couldn't look white folk in the face. All
Mhm.
kind of things, man. And this man is living. He's living
Yeah.
right now, and I'm great. I know that that's not the only book, but because that was the book that I had at the time, it literally gives us a purview of what happened even not that long ago. And yes, we are old reparations. And I'm sorry, that's all. I just wanted to share that with
Yeah, so
everybody.
no, that's very important. You're right. So a lot of the work we're having to do now is that this report is really this education, right? Educating folks around what is reparations, why we're owed reparations, right? It's not, again, it's not just about slavery. It's all about all the other things that's happened since the abolition of slavery. It's a key point that we're always trying to make with folks, right? That we're not just talking about the singular event. It's all the things that happened as well as this particular event. But yes, thank you for continuing to remind us. It's like one of the core principles that we have. We're trying to sort of figure out how can we really get connected with folks to make them believe that this is possible. Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Thank you so much. And because we kept having these little Facebook glitches, what we're going to do is to pull your presentation
Mhm.
and upload it to YouTube
Oh,
so
great.
that people will be able to view it.
Mhm.
Again, we cannot have a document um, be an academic exercise that means so much to so many of us. And so in my closing remarks, what I would like to do is to shift briefly um, to to the fact that we do have a governor's election November 4th. This message is for the registered voters. Registered voters, only 40% of you came out to vote in the last general election. The November 4th election will be for the governor of the state of New Jersey. We all have a vested interest in it. And if we are registered to vote, we have no excuse, no reason why we should not and cannot vote. There are three ways to vote now, not just one. You do not have to wait till election day. You can plan to vote by mail, or you have early voting the week prior to the election day, and then finally election day. Now, the registered voters, you have a responsibility because you know that being registered to vote is important. That's why you're registered. But it's not enough just to be registered and then not come out to vote and then feel defeated or feel like it doesn't matter. The stories are starting to come to us about all kinds of scenarios. And it's not just undocumented immigrants who are being round up by ICE. That is the more dramatic, flamboyant, emotional part because our emotions are being played on. And so we have a decision to make for November for who's going to be our chief executive in Trenton for the next 4 years. There are two people running. The primary is over. Whether you voted in the primary or you did not, it's over. And now you must come out again and vote for there are two people running. There is Jack Citarelli and Mikey Sherrill. It is for you to get information about what they stand for, their issues, get out of your feelings. This is not about your emotional feelings and how you don't like somebody or you do like somebody, and all that back and forth stuff on Facebook means nothing. Armchair revolutionary Facebook stuff to get hits and likes. Our life is so important. It is way more important than that. And so, registered voters, This is a plea for you to make a plan to register to make a plan to come out and vote, either November 4th, early voting, or vote by mail, one of them. And we look forward to seeing you on August 23rd, at the resource fair that is being sponsored by Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, who is our Congresswoman. This is her first year. She is a freshman Congresswoman. You know what she's going through. She's been indicted for doing her job, for taking a stand, for advocating. She's been indicted. And so we get the opportunity to support this back to school family festival. We have to take responsibility for getting information that we can use and we can share so that our community is informed. That's how we build community. And with that, I wanted to just I want us to end the way that we started, in prayer. I don't know if um Elder Favors is on.
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, so can you close us in prayer, please?
Yes, yes. Let us pray. Father, we say thank you for tonight. We thank you for our presenter on tonight. We thank you for the information you provided on tonight. And Father God, I ask that we utilize the information that has come forth and that we continue to educate others. And Father God, as we leave this line but never from your presence, we continue to give you all the glory and the honor. Amen.
Amen.
And thank you, Laissa, Alexis, for doing a fantastic representation of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and introducing us about reparations. And certainly hopefully this will not be our last conversation.
Yes, thank y'all. Thank y'all for your questions and your engagement. I had fun doing this actually.
Great. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.